Okay, so what does it mean to be carnally minded? Because I think that there's some confusion as to what exactly it means to be carnally minded. Because see, we're supposed to follow the Spirit, and the Spirit of God is supposed to indwell us and is supposed to consume us. And so the Spirit of God should push out our carnal selves. And it's just really that simple. And as the Spirit of God begins to breathe His life through us, then we should begin to die to the old carnal nature that we have. Because the Spirit of God comes in to change all of us. And so as the Spirit changes us, then we're going to die to the old carnal nature, because we shouldn't be living in the flesh, and we shouldn't be living inside of the old carnal realm, because Christ has called us to live through the Spirit and to breathe through the Spirit. And so that means that we're not bound to the carnality of our world, because we're alive to the Spirit of God, and the Spirit of God is alive in us. And so that should change our perspective on everything, because the Spirit of God is alive in us, and the Spirit of God is consuming us. And so that's why we shouldn't be just bound to, well, this is how it is, because if you're this way, then you're not going to change, and there's just nothing that can be done about that. I mean, because I've heard that for years. But God might be saying something a little bit different, I think that God, once the Spirit of God comes upon you, it's going to change you. And if the Spirit of God comes upon you and it doesn't change you, then there is something that is really wrong with this situation. Because the Spirit of God comes to breathe the very life of God onto us. And so how can we remain carnally minded if we have the Spirit of God on us? Because the Spirit of God changes everything about us. And so how can we be so attached to the flesh if the Spirit of God is truly on us? Because the Spirit of God comes to breathe His life onto us. And the Spirit of God comes to change us and to mold us and to form us to His desire. And so how can we be bound to our carnal nature if the Spirit of God is really on us? I mean, it's pretty simple that we can't be bound to our carnal nature if the Spirit of God is on us. I mean, it just doesn't work that way. Christ came to give us liberty and to give us life. And so we should be operating in that liberty and in that life. And there should be joy in doing that because we're serving our Father. And we should find joy in doing that because we're out to seek out His will, and we're out to accomplish His purpose on earth, and we're out to build His kingdom on earth. And so how can a carnal person build the kingdom of God on earth? I mean, it really can't. But the only way that you can't be carnal is if the Spirit of God is on you. And if the Spirit of God rests on you, I mean, then how can you be carnal? I mean, there's just really no room for us to be carnal because the Spirit of God is on us. I mean, just think about that. The Spirit of God dwells on His people. I mean, just let that go really deep. Because the Spirit of God, I mean, it should go deep down within you. And it should change everything about you. Because you have the Spirit of God on you. I mean, the Spirit of God is on you. And so because the Spirit of God is on you, then that should change everything. I mean, that should give you a whole new perspective on this world. Because the Spirit of God should be deeply ingrained in everything you do. And the Spirit of God should transform you. And the Spirit of God should give you a new life and a new liberty. And because Christ came to make us a new creature. And so how can we be that new creation and that new creature if we're still living inside of the realm of the carnality of this world? I mean, we can't be carnal creatures. We can't be fleshly people because we're born of the Spirit of God. And so how can a person that's born of the Spirit of God continue to operate out of the flesh? I mean, there's just really no way to go about it. And because we're born of the Spirit, then that should really transform us. Because how can we be carnal if we're born of the Spirit of God? Because the Spirit of God is on us. I mean, the Spirit of the living God is on us. And the Spirit of the living God has come to break every bondage inside of our lives so that we can go out and break every bondage that's on every person. Because Christ came to give us life and liberty. And so he wants us to give others life and liberty also. Because his kingdom has come within us. And so we should be going out and proclaiming his kingdom on others. It's just really that simple. Because his kingdom should transform us. And his kingdom should change us. Because that's what Christ came to do. And so anyways, I think that that's going to be it for today. And so anyways, goodbye.